is when we start a company, are we doing it the right way? Do we have all the know-how, all the great ideas, the market, the production, the execution, the supply chain, the vendor management, customer acquisition tools, the team management, the whole bunch of we actually do that. And that is when we are looking at, how do we take this? So we're going to spend about 40 minutes uh, first into the 10 biggest blunders that entrepreneurs have. And then we move on to what is it, we can do about it and how we can go about this thing. So as I go to the next slide, I just want to explain this to you. This is always a tightrope walking. I mean, entrepreneurship is always a tightrope walking. It's like walking on thin ropes because at any point of time and every point of time, an entrepreneur must be able to do this in the right way. So we're looking at the 10 things and then we're looking at life measure. How do you measure your success? And what happens if you fail? And what happens when you fail? How do you get up and start going again? And then what are the risk mitigation tools that you need? So this is how we're going to look at it. So before I dive too much time, I'm moving on to this particular slide. So this is a very, very, very critical slide because it's going to show you how an entrepreneurial journey is. Most importantly, when we look at entrepreneurship, there's a roadmap. Everybody knows I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be the next millionaire. I want to be the next billionaire. How do I go about this? And what do I have to do? The challenge here is, do you know how the journey is? What do you have to do? How are you going to go about this? So if you look at this particular slide, everybody is thinking, from here, my first journey is to go up all the way here. And so that is exactly how we're looking at it. I start and then my marketing plan is good, my production is good, my supply chain is good, my customer acquisition model is good. I'm just going to go to the next thing of creating that billion-dollar enterprise or million-dollar enterprise or whatever. But this is the entrepreneurial journey map. 99% of the entrepreneurs, when they launch, till the time they launch, everything is looking very good. The minute they launch, they land into facing execution reality and they land up here. So this is where they land up and fall into a pit. So once you fall into a pit, you keep wondering, do I survive? Do I not survive? If I survive, how do I go about it? I mean, what do I have to do? Do you have the tenacity? Do you have the focus? Do you have everything else to survive? And if you survive that first big deep down pit, then you are able to focus and then grow up here and then go from here. You keep going up and you keep going up. This is the way entrepreneurs happen, grow, and this is the way it happens all the time. And we have seen it over and over again. So 99% of the entrepreneurs, they all believe, I've got a great idea. Let me start. Now, before you start, you have to make sure that, you are covering so many things that before, you dive straight in, because you don't want to start and land up in a deep, deep pit that you can't get out from. So this is, the entrepreneur leap, which I was going to talk about. Now, what's the first biggest screw up that we are talking about? The biggest screw up that which we see is all the time is entrepreneurs may have ideas rolling in and they're looking at how do because as an entrepreneur, you have a solution 1 and a solution 2 and a solution 3 and a solution 4. So, and you're looking at revenue streams 1, and then before you move, you have a revenue stream 2, and before you know it, you have a revenue stream 3. And you are looking at, I got this revenue, that revenue, I got to focus here. What happens is you can't do that because you have limited resources and you have to focus on one and penetrate and make that break happen. Now, I'm giving you an example of intralinks. Now, most of you know what is a virtual data room today. But in 2000, there was virtually very little players because this was the concept at that time, virtual data room and loan syndication documents and things that way. So Intralinks was a company in 2000, and they wanted to go and start fundraising. So they got money, they got investors, and they had seven products. So they had seven products which was coming to them, and with the seven products that was getting revenues, they were all but they were bleeding. They were bleeding $18 million with a revenue of $3 million. That's when they bought Jim, a good friend of mine. So Jim came on board and he said, listen, I think we've got seven products, each of them are producing revenues, but we have to just focus on one, just one, and leave the rest. The board of directors and the investors, the VC firms, they said, this is ridiculous. You're mad. How are we going to do it? We've got revenues. We've developed, we've invested, we've developed the product. We have to get revenues. But this guy persisted, and finally they shed out six products. They got one product. And with that first product, then they had to go fundraise. Now he had to go focus. He had to go fundraise. Now this is similar to like you playing soccer or football. Those who know football, the game of football or soccer, if you have a goal post and you are in the field, you're able to kick towards that goal post, right? I mean, that's how you play soccer. You are able to take the ball, run towards the opposition goal post, and then kick the ball. What if there are 3 or 4 goal posts there? Now, where will you kick the ball? You will say, okay, let me kick to the closest one. And then when I'm to the next goal post, I'll click to the next closest one. You, like entrepreneurs, you are going to dilute your resources. You cannot have 5 different goal posts. You have to have one goal post. And that's where your focus and energy is going to be. And here, going back to Intralinks, Jim realized that, okay, fair enough. Now we've got one, but we need to get investors on board. He went to 50 different investors in New York and Silicon Valley pitching along he and his team, boarded the plane, got the appointments, went to pitch. Pitch 1, pitch 2, pitch 3, pitch 4, pitch 5, constantly pitching. And after 50 presentations, they still didn't get the money. So we move on to the next one, is you cannot quit. You need to have tenacity. You are an entrepreneur. You have dived into it. Now you have to go ahead and get funding. Without your funding, without pulling it through, you cannot grow up the company. So you go to first investor, the second one, third one, fourth one, and that's how you keep going on and on. So what Jim did was he finished 50. They came back, they were all tired. Then they pivoted the model. They said, listen, maybe, we need to listen. We need to see what to do. So they pivoted the model a bit, made more pivots. By the time they reached this 80th investor, they got the $50 million that they wanted. Today, they are a $1 billion enterprise. What are we seeing here? We are seeing here, you need to persist. You need to go in. You cannot give up. And that's, we're moving on to the next slide. A winner is a dreamer who never gives up. If you are somebody who is sitting and who's looking, then you can't give up. I'm giving another example of Starbucks. How many of you know Starbucks? The coffee maker, the coffee shop. All of us know Starbucks. And so we're looking at Starbucks. And what are we seeing in Starbucks? We are seeing that people are there at Starbucks. They're drinking coffee. But Howard Schultz, when he first went to Italy, and he got that first coffee in Italy, he came back saying, you know what? America is not a coffee drinking country. We need to get this to America. That's what we need. So what he did is he went back, he went to his town and he made a business plan. He wanted $3 million. That's what he wanted. And so he and his wife, they started visiting all the H&I, high net worth individuals in this town. And they couldn't get anybody because nobody in America was drinking coffee. So nobody would invest. Then his wife felt pity for him and said, listen, why don't we go to my town and let's stay with my parents and we'll go and visit. So he went back to his town, his wife's town, and they went and they shortlisted all the people and they started visiting. When he reached the 270th investor, 270th investor, how many of you have that tenacity? How many of you have the persistence? How many of you would quit before you go into the 270th investor? He got the 270th investor who said, I'll give you 50%. That's $1.5 million. And by the time he went to the 283rd investor, he got that entire $3 million. So what is it we are seeing? And today the company is worth $123 billion. What are we seeing here? We are seeing persistence. We are seeing tenacity. We are seeing people who have stood their ground because they believed and they have a passionate and they knew that they could do it, but they were pivoting. They made changes. They were dynamic. They were looking at it. So this is your second, biggest thing that you're looking at. And your third one is the biggest screw up, again, is no customer validation. Why are we talking about no customer validation? Is because 80% of the startups fail because they have not gone to their customer and built a solution that the customer wants. Now, we receive almost 20 investment decks and pitch decks every day. 20 per day is what comes into us. And we have to filter this out. And we get in pitch decks from all over the world, whether it's from South America, from Australia, whether it's from Japan, Korea, China, all over the world, we get pitch decks. The first thing we look at is how many of these have been validated by customers. Why is it so important to get this validated by customers? Because 99% of the entrepreneurs start a journey because of their personal experience. They face a problem, they find a solution that is in their perspective. Because I face a problem. So I find a solution and I think, if I am facing the problem, there are so many people who are facing the same problem. And what happens? This goes on and on. So this is a journey. This is what exactly happens. I'm giving you another case study. We had a company that was making, Nestle and things. So they make Nutella. So that's a chocolate spread, and things. So there was another company. Somebody had an idea. Listen, Nutella is a chocolate spread, and it's got no flavors. I mean, it's not coming in honey flavor, coconut flavor, coffee flavor, etc. So why don't we add some flavor to the same chocolate spread? And then if we can reduce the sugar intent by 20%, then we have a product. So what they did was they went and built this. And so without doing further things. So this is exactly what happens. Customers realized was not moving in at the customer speed because also not only customer validation, they did not do the market research. And market research is so critical. Once you have a customer validation, customers have to define the product. You need to get your customers to define your product or service that they require. If customers require it, you're past one step, but then you want to find out how much of the market is there and what's the competition all about. Now, if the market report is skewed towards you and what your questions you want to be, then it's not a perfect market report because it's like you're in a plane and you're having a wrong navigation altimeter. So if the altimeter in a plane is not right, it's supposed to reach, say, 3,000 meters, but if it's reading 300 meters, you're going to crash into a hill. So the market report should not be skewed, it should not be altered, it should be a third-party market report that should go and actually find out who and how this thing works. So this is key, because if you don't have that, then it's going to go around in circles. It's going to go around in making reports. So coming back to this particular company, they went and they did. And Nutella is $1 billion enterprise. It will just take a fraction of a second for them to change their flavors. It take a fraction of a second for them to go back and reduce the sugar content, whatever they want to do. This company stood no chance. And they went, they raised capital $1 million, $2 million, and it did not survive exactly what they wanted to go inside, because it is just an assumption, a personal experience, without market research, without the proper diligence. They went into the market, raised their capital from their friends and family, and they said, you know what, we got it. And friends and family will say, yeah, you're right. Nutella does not have this flavor, and you're having the flavor, so they will happen. So friends and family listen to you because they are trusting you. They are your friends, they are your family. But if you are third parties looking at it, they'll say, what if a billion-dollar enterprise like Nutella, if can't they change the flavors? Can't they change this thing? And then what happens? What happens to your market share? How will you penetrate? What will you do? How will you go about it? So market research is one of the biggest next drawbacks that we have seen by entrepreneurs, because they go in because of their gut feel, they go in because of their personal experience, they go in because they have skewed their responses from a few customers without doing a third party proper market research. So that is another failure. Then, so let's imagine that you have got your customers done, then you have got your entire documents done in market research, and there is a market. Now you have, before you dive in and set up your company and go ahead and do everything, you have to go through these two critical formulas: financial sustainability. Because if you can't sustain the business financially, you have no choice, you have no future. There is no business. You will burn yourself, you'll burn others' capital, you'll burn your time, you'll burn your effort, and there's no future. So how are you going to do that? What do you have to do for your financial sustainability? So the first part of the financial sustainability is, when I say Q, P minus C, that's P is your selling price, C is your cost price, so your gross margin. Q is your number of units, should be greater than your fixed cost. Your fixed cost, so your gross margin into number of units must be greater than your fixed cost. That's the first thing that you have to do. Right? So you have to get that organized. And the second thing that you're looking here is your lifetime value of a customer should be greater than the customer acquisition cost. So if you're spending, say, $10 for acquiring a customer, the lifetime value of the customer should be greater than $10. Otherwise, you'll be spending more capital, but the lifetime value goes down. And then that business is going to fail. You can spend 1 year, 10 years, 100 years, that business is not going to make enough money for you to grow and become a billion-dollar enterprise. These are two critical formulas. These are two things that you cannot let go. Lifetime value should be greater than customer acquisition cost, and then number of units into gross margin should be greater than your fixed cost. So these are two financial, the foundations of how you build your entire model through. Then you're looking at, how you are not driving the entire time and investment. So that's why we just showed, this is a time and this is the entire investments that has to go through. Entrepreneurs are multitasking all the time, So when you start something, you're starting something small and you're starting something big, and you're looking at, what you have to do, how you have to go about it, and seeing what you have to do. The question and the big challenge all the time is, you cannot do fundraising and delegate it to somebody else. You cannot say, you know what, John, you're the marketing head, Tom, you're the financial officer, go ahead and do the fundraising. Fundraising is your key. That is a part of your life as an entrepreneur. You have to fundraise every year for the rest of your life, as long as you're an entrepreneur and you're growing the company. A growing company needs capital, and fundraising is part of that whole process. You have to invest your time. And then I've seen so many entrepreneurs who say, listen, I will send my pitch decks by email to 1,000 investors, and somebody's going to click it and call me. No, it's not going to happen that way. You have to invest your money as well. You have to take time to travel, take time to meet, take time to call your team. There's a lot of spend as well. How are you going to do that? That means if you've got a budget to make a project, 20% has to be kept towards fundraising. Then That's not all. You also will have to shed sweat equity. Why? Because you will not get a top end, advisors. You will not get a top end board of directors without shedding sweat equity. They are the ones who are going to add value and meat to your entire team, because investors want to see whether you got the best advisors, you got the best board, can you succeed, because these are the people who are going to help you succeed, and they will not come in unless you're parting with some sweat equity. And we have seen this over and over again, that people are there with you to drive this forward, as long as you're able to raise that capital. But to raise the capital, you need to invest time, money, and sweat equity. It's a three-way process. Now I want to explain about entrepreneurs, the screw up number 7. And this is typical with all the entrepreneurs, including myself. I've done this over and over again, is being a superman versus working as a team. Now, why are we a superman? Because let me give you an example of Trader Joe, right? So those of you who are from the US will know about Trader Joe. And today, Trader Joe is a $13 billion enterprise, $13 billion. But when Doug Rauch was the CEO of Trader Joe, there was like, a couple of employees. And so Doug was, a superman. He was the front-end source teller, he was the purchase manager, he was a marketing manager, he was the vendor manager, he was the finance guy, he was the cleaner in the morning, he used to come and, close down the shutters in the evening. He was a superman because he was doing 10 different tasks at the same time. And then he started hiring people because people started coming and started buying the products. And then what happens? He became a complete wreck because he was micromanaging. He was just micromanaging. He wanted everybody to be like him, doing 10 different tasks and 10 different jobs, and he was micromanaging. And how is it a company like Trader Joe, which had a micromanager as a CEO, then become a $13 billion enterprise? You cannot be a control freak. Entrepreneurs, you have to understand, you will become control freaks. By default, you have to learn to let go. And so what happened with Trader Joe, Doug, is one of his new hires came and told Doug, enough. You're driving us crazy. If you don't let go, we are getting out from here because you're driving us crazy. Stop micromanaging. We are people. We can do it. We understand what you want. And he went back home saying, man, this is really tough. But then he led to empower. He trusted his people, he empowered them, and they started flourishing. And today, they are a $13 billion enterprise. This is screw up number 7. You need to let go. Now, and let your team take effort. Then I'm going to the next major one is, validating your assumptions. It's because you've now built a business plan, you've got everything, and you want to just go ahead and start the entire operations. But entrepreneurs, understand this one simple thing. Everything is built on assumptions, right? Your financial model has got several assumptions. Your marketing plan has assumptions. Your HR plan has assumptions. Your team effort has assumptions. Your operations have assumptions. Your financial, everything has assumptions. So if you're not able to plug in and validate those assumptions, you are going to fall somewhere. And I'm going to give you another example. Endeavor is a non-profit in US, by Linda Ross. She is the CEO there. And, they support entrepreneurs all over the world, especially in emerging markets. And they got about 3,000 entrepreneurs that they're supporting. Great team. Linda's written several books. You could just check on Google and you'll find all that out. So Linda's board told her in 2007, Linda, why don't you set up an office in India? India is booming. Indian entrepreneurs are booming. Look at the number of companies that have come out from India that have become global. Why aren't you going and setting up an office in India? So Linda said, "Oh, okay, I see it. I'm seeing some reports." So without any double checking, any assumptions on any market research or anything, she just jumped on a plane to Delhi, and she landed in Delhi, and then she went to Bangalore and Mumbai. And I'm an Indian myself, but let me tell you, Indians, treat their guests with great hospitality. They just take them out for lunches, dinners, and treat them like royal kings. So Linda loved a very warm welcome. So she went and set up an office in Bangalore, and then office in Mumbai and Delhi, and she was waiting for the entrepreneurs. They're typical entrepreneurs in the US, and nothing happened. Then, after almost 1.5 years of struggle, people said, you know what, Linda, you need to go down to the smaller cities, smaller cities like Coimbatore, Kanpur, Nagpur, smaller cities. Go to smaller cities, you'll find entrepreneurs there. Then she realized that she could not get entrepreneurs there. And then she finally had to pack a bag and come back home. What happened is because there was a whole bunch of cultural differences. She didn't validate her assumptions. There's a whole bunch of entrepreneurial, outflow in India versus US. There's a whole understanding of the legal support systems and the complexities of being an entrepreneur in India. The amount of interest for debt. I mean, in the US you can get debt at 2%. In India you pay 14% for debt. And and the availability of capital for setting up something in the US is plenty, whereas in India or in most of the emerging markets, it's limited. So without doing all your assumptions, you just dive into the pool and then you see that the pool has no water, you collapse, you die. You have to validate your assumptions. Whatever business plan you have, whichever business plan you have no choice but to validate your assumptions. If you don't validate them, it's like you're diving into a pool and you're thinking there is water and there is no water. And if it's a higher the dive, it can even be fatal. So be careful. And then I'm talking about the next one is, we're talking about negotiations, right? Time and time again, I have been in the same position of negotiations for valuations and negotiations with entrepreneurs. And I've seen entrepreneurs walk out from great deals because they over negotiate. There was a time, a couple of years back, I had a gentleman, an entrepreneur, fly in halfway across the world, and we got into a discussion meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning. Okay, just understand this: 8 o'clock in the morning, and for negotiating. And we thought that it's a couple of hours. So after 3 hours, we still couldn't agree, but we thought it's just very close, so let's push it. We had lunch, then we pushed it till evening, another 2-3 hours. And we said, okay, probably after dinner we should close. So after dinner we said, let's push it till 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. We sat there till next day 7 o'clock in the morning, and yet we could not hammer out a thing because both of us really wanted the deal, and we just could not do it because that entrepreneur wanted to be having the upper hand all the time, and finally the deal did not happen. What we are saying is, you see this rope here, in a rope type of pull, what happens is if you do this, you are actually going to collapse. Because when you're pulling a rope, there's only one winner. And if you're pulling it too hard, the investors are going to let go. They're going to tell you, thank you very much, I have to let go. So when you get investors, don't negotiate too hard. If you negotiate too hard, you will lose. And that particular gentleman who came in from halfway across the world never got the funding for his project, never got from us, from anyone. And that whole project he had to shelve because he never got the funding. Years later, I met him and he said, you know what, something was with me. I had no clue. I should have just, pushed in. I should have just done that. So that's what we are saying. Don't over negotiate. Next is customer valuation, right? So when we're saying what is customer valuation, we are looking at you're valuing your customers or you're valuing your company. And we have seen companies after companies collapse because they were not focusing on their customers. They were focusing on themselves. Okay. How many of you know about the company known as Pebble watches? So Pebble Watch in 2012 to 2016 had the largest Kickstarter campaign in the United States. The largest Kickstarter campaign. You can go do a Google research and you see. Pebble watches, it's a wearable watch. They had the largest Kickstarter campaign in the United States. What happened? By end of 2016, they had to close down and they had to sell off to today's Fitbit. Fitbit today is $1.4 billion. So what happened to Pebble? They had the largest Kickstarter campaign. They raised $15 million, $10 million, $40 million. What happened to Pebble? People loved Pebble, but they were not able to focus on the customer. They were focusing on internal valuations and the company as well. Look at the companies who focused on the customer and did not worry about the valuation. Amazon. Amazon focused on the customer. Uber focused on the customer. Airbnb focused on the customer. Your products and your services, always your focus, your number one focus, and your number two focus, and the number 10 focus is your customer. You don't lose focus of your customer. Valuations will come. If you got customers, you got value, your customers will come. And we have got more cases, but I think I'm running short of time. I just needed to think. So next, my challenge to all of you is, none of us plan for failure. Do you plan for failure? We don't plan for failure. But as entrepreneurs, we will fail. So we should be mentally prepared that if we fail, what happens? Okay. The reason I'm saying this, when I speak to entrepreneurs and I ask them, do you plan for failure? They say, no. We are not going to fail. We are 100% positive. We will succeed. We will succeed. We will succeed. We will succeed. No entrepreneur will ever say, you know what happens if I fail? Right? And if so, then you look at BlackBerry. Look at BlackBerry. Those of you in the last 10 years, 20 years, you'll realize the chairman of BlackBerry never went and told the board of BlackBerry in 2001, ladies and gentlemen, I have a brilliant strategy that in the next 10 years, by 2013, we'll be bankrupt. This was the company that was challenging Apple. Where's Apple and where's BlackBerry? Nowhere. What did they do wrong? They had the best brains. They had guys from Harvard, from Wharton, from Kellogg, the best brains in the world, yet they messed up. What about Nokia? Everybody knew Nokia was a large company. Did the CEO of Nokia in 2004 go and tell the board, ladies and gentlemen, we have the best strategy. In another 10 years, we will be bankrupt? No. So what went wrong with these companies? And this can go on and on. So what went wrong with these companies? The question is, they were always focused on short term. Nobody focused on long term. Everybody was focused on today, tomorrow, next 3 months. What is it we have to do next 3 months? They were so blindsided, they could not look up. They were looking down. And when you look down and walk, when you hit a boulder, you fall. Because you're not seeing a boulder come. You have to plan short term and you have to plan long term. And now Professor Clay Christensen from Harvard, he wrote several books. One is Measure of Life. It's an important read because for entrepreneurs, I always recommend that you need to read that. He also wrote a book on, Founder's Dilemma and Founder's, Solution as well. So you need to read those books. They give a lot of great insight of how to tackle it, what's the strategy and everything. When we plan to fail a decade ahead, we fail. We have to plan 1 or 2 decades ahead. So the key to this is, you have to invest short term and long term. And as an entrepreneur, let me remind you this simple thing, simple logic. You have to, it's like Muhammad Ali, right? So when you were with Muhammad Ali, when I had a chance to speak with him, so one of the questions was, what did you do when you fell down? And his simple answer was, I had 2 choices. If I fall down and I don't get up, I'm finished. I have to get up because that's the only way I'm able to fight and win back again. So as entrepreneurs, there will be failures, there will be, you know, risk that you have to take. Without risk, you can't be an entrepreneur. But remember, you can always get up and stand back and fight again. That's how winners are made. That's how you become seasoned. That's how you get the corrections. That's how you're able to stand and say, you know what, doesn't matter. I'm able to do it. That's the resilience. Linda Ross used to say the biggest failure of an entrepreneur is not financial capital, it's not marketing, it's the inability of the entrepreneur to overcome his own fears. Because he fears what will happen if I lose everything. You have nothing to lose. You came with nothing. You have nothing to lose. You can restart back again. It's the ability to say, I want to get up. So be bold, take risks, soar the skies. Success is not final and failure is not fatal. Remember this, success is never final. So those who succeed don't say, I'm on top of the world. No, you have to keep on innovating, keep on being dynamic, be listening, empower people. And failure is never fatal. Success is not what people think it looks like. Success is what, it goes round and round and round and round and goes up there. All of us have had failures. All of us have overcome failures, and we will be facing, difficulties and challenges in the future. But we all know one thing: we will always get up, fight, and win. These are 10 of the entrepreneurial blunders. There are more. There are another 15, 20, almost 30 more that we have identified. So, in summary, I'd like to tell about these three things. Identify the key risk of your startup. Understand the gap analysis and impact of these risks. So you identify what's your startup, what are the key risks. Identify the gap, work on the gap to mitigate the risk. Improve the probability of success to 95%, because if you improve the probability of success to 95%, then you will at least be in business for the next 5 years. Attract global investors with low startup risk, because if you've got 95% probability of success, you will attract investors from all over the world. Soar the skies and conquer the world. And risk mitigation is the key for startups to succeed. So that's it from my side. Now the floor is yours, gentlemen, for questions and answers. If you want to reach out to me, here's my contact information. You could reach out to me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and this is a US number, so you'll have to call the US number if you want to speak to our office staff over here. But I'd be happy to take questions and take it forward from there.
Thank you so much, George. So we are awaiting questions. So I have certain chats right here. So whoever looking for funding, obviously, yes, we are here to help you. So you can reach out to us through our emails, and then individually we can discuss about the same. Okay, I do have some people asking that on the chat board. That's the reason why I mentioned that. Apart from that, any questions from this forum? Because I would like to preference this forum because I have certain questions from our from the live feed of platforms. So let's address that first. So then, George, there was a question at how do we identify our gaps? It's a question from a live feed from a
Yeah.
business owner.
Yeah. So as an entrepreneur, you first is you need to understand your risk and understand how to do this risk. You have multiple choices. You have consultants like Deloitte, KPMG, and a whole bunch of consulting companies who can do an assessment and come back and tell you on what are your risks and what are your gaps. Even ALCOR has its own artificial intelligence tool that we have invested, and we can do that. And that's an assessment to see how you can understand your risk. And it's a 10-minute, 15-minute exercise. You can see what can be done.
Great. George, there's another question that how does ALCOR assist in researching market as mentioned with third-party market research?
I mean, we had to look at, we have multiple vendors for market research in different countries, different regions, depending on what market, what is the industry, what are the geographies we're looking at. But we have vendors that we can recommend. You'll have to choose. We don't do the research ourselves for anybody.
I do see that somebody putting in, I think it's Bernardo. If you can elaborate, the question says regarding proof of concept. So, Bernardo, if you can hear me
Yes.
and just please,
Here's a
yeah,
question.
if you can elaborate.
Well,
Yeah.
I have a crowdfunding platform, and I wish I had a little doodad that I can put in people's hands, and they can tell me, "Hey, this is great." But proof of concept for me would mean attracting a campaigner to my campaign that would actually be successful, so that I can use that as proof of concept. So it's not as easy to get that. I just was wondering if had any ideas of how I can, well, get that process through.
Yeah. Okay. So Bernardo, we have invested in a crowdfunding platform. Okay. It is known as EduDharma, EDU Dharma. My colleagues will send you the link. We have invested in the crowdfunding platform, and it's crowdfunding, for social causes and everything. But we could introduce you to the CEO there. He could work with you. He could guide you on what you have to do and how you have to go. Which country are you from?
Yeah, I live in Puerto Rico.
You're muted
right now. My company, my LLC, is in Delaware, but I live in Puerto Rico, and I'm a solo entrepreneur. So I got no team members or.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think our team will be happy to. Yeah, we can do that. I'd be happy to do the introductions, and we can see how we can work with you and take it forward. Yep.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I also have an inquiry about seed funding, and as I told you that individually we will be more than glad to help you. Okay, I will make a note of that, and we will reach out to you through email. I have somebody else. So from Gallo. So Gallo is a digital news startup. Okay, the founders are very experienced journalists. And all the same, we know that the business model for the news industry has disappeared. We are focused on a membership model, but there are few examples of financially successful digital news venture. So, John, what exactly is your question?
John, you're muted.
Yeah.
John, you're muted. Yeah.
Hi. Well, the question is, I myself wonder if we're doing this just because we're journalists. We've been journalists for a long time, and that's what we know how to do. But the business model, to be able to convince investors to get involved in an industry that is struggling, it seems to be something that's a very daunting challenge. We are convinced that we can produce great journalism, different journalism. We think that our value proposition is doing, we're working in Latin America, but our value proposition is producing the type of journalism that is in-depth, long form, low volume, not keeping up with the news cycle, because there's plenty of publications that keep up with the news cycle, but there aren't that many that look at subjects in depth. But we know that the financial challenges is very high, and that there's really not a clear pathway, although most people nowadays are going for either a subscription model or a membership model.
So John, what I would suggest is we have a AI tool for artificial intelligence tool for business idea validation. One of my colleagues can run that with you, and we could just do an assessment to see if the business idea is commercially viable. As I told you before, the cost of customer acquisition should be lower than the lifetime value of a customer, right? So, that is the key. So if you are able to do that, we look at your fixed costs. I mean, if we get that model right, then we understand things. And right now we have to see also what's the cost of your customer acquisition. So there's a tool. My colleagues will be happy to assist you and walk you through it before you dive too deeply with a lot of resources and everything, and then realize as you go along, whether this is the right thing to do or whether you have to pivot and come up with a different business model. We'll be happy to assist you, John.
Okay, thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. We will be in touch with you. George, there's one question from another platform that says that, how do you know if startup is viable for funding?
Startups always are viable for funding, right? Because if a startup is able to, do all those 30 to 40 different exercises in terms of risk mitigation, you will get funding. We have seen startups who have got a funding score of 95% through our artificial intelligence tool get the funding. There's a 95%, there's a 100% chance of getting funding if your AI score is above 95%. And anything more than 80% is liable for funding, but 90%, 95%, we are sure you'll get funded. And that's how it happens all over the world. Every year startups get funded. All you have to do is make sure that the risk of each startup, you're able to, mitigate it so that investors come on board.
Great. Next question is that from Abraham, when I introduce a business plan, what the investor look at the most in the business plan? So what is it which attracts the investors in the business plan is what he meant.
So, Ibrahim, the investors are looking at multiple different things. So, I will just share my screen a bit so you can understand, how that would look like in terms of from an investor perspective is to, if you see here, there are roughly about 40 different things that an investor needs to look at. They want to see your customer preparedness. They want to see your financial preparedness. They want to see your market preparedness. They want to see your, profit margin. They want to see your business strength. They want to see whether you've got systematic risks, how you're managing the systematic risks. They want to see how you have validated your assumptions. They want to see, is your product driven by market need or is it a market push? They want to know who's your competition. Does the competition have the financial muscle to come and walk you out? They want to know how prepared are you or how committed are you to this process? Is it that you see, when one of the things that I always look before investing in a company is how prepared are the founders. So when Rome was built, when Julius Caesar sent the ships into conquer England, 2,000 years back. The only way he could do it was he put the soldiers into the shores of England and they burned the ships. And they told the soldiers, well, if you want to go back, you have to do this. So what we are saying is you have to focus on, there's so many risks, mitigate the risk. And if you want, ALCOR has got a consulting arm, we could work with you and take it forward in that direction.
Well, thank you, George. And there's one more. So if we have a SaaS fintech startup, what should I do to get investors?
First thing is your business plan and your pitch deck. You run it, send it to us. We'll do an assessment. We'll reach out to you and we'll tell you what you have to do. If it's a great solution, definitely we can get you the investors, or we will invest, or we will get you the investors.
So I think they're comfortable. So that's why I think we have mitigated
Guys, can I please request everybody to mute? Right. So, so I have one more question. Whether do you find our business model investable? I think it's related to more of e-commerce using Shopify and Facebook ads. So I think the answer is same. We will be in touch with you. We would require your pitch deck, and then obviously
Yeah,
the assessment.
you
Yeah.
come over to our website, send in your pitch decks. Our team will analyze it and revert back to you.
What are the matrix investors looking for? Maybe one of the second last question I'll say.
Investors are looking for the investability of a company. So they always are looking at, is this company investable? What is my risk if I put the money that I can make more money out of it? So they are always looking at investability of the company. So they're looking at founders, they're looking at the execution team, they're looking at the market preparedness, they're looking at the customer preparedness, they're looking at a financial model. It's a combination of all that. So, and most of the entrepreneurs have some particular skill. That's either they are good in the technology side, but they do not have the rest, or they're good in marketing, or they're good in something. And that's where we also have a consulting arm that could sit with you, work with you, and fill up the gaps and get you where you want to go.
Maros has a question. Are there any templates that you prefer when accepting documents like business plan? You did mention AI algorithm that runs through them.
Uh, you can send in us your pitch decks and multiple things. We have built our platforms to accept the documents as in multiple templates, but we'll be able to figure it out. So you can send it to us. We are not asking you to send anything, but there are a few questions on our website that you need to answer when you send this on, so it goes into the right analysis.
I think yeah. I think we have covered all the questions as of now. So, yeah,
entrepreneurs, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I look forward to hearing back from you. I look forward to working with you. And I look forward to our consulting arm can consult with you. Our investment banking team can go ahead and fundraise. And if your funding score is more than 85%, we will go ahead and invest with you as well. Thank you very much and have a wonderful afternoon and evening. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks.